So on-page optimization is all about optimizing for speed with things that you can do on the page of your WordPress site. So these are not necessarily technical aspects. These are the things you should do on your pages. And because these are rather simple and some of them are very common sense, I'm going to do them in like a top 10. So here's 10 ways you can optimize your website on WordPress for much faster page loading. Number one, please ditch the slideshow. Slideshows add little or nothing to your website, and there's something that's sort of overhung from the early 2010s. They were very popular when desktop websites were still the majority of the way that we accessed things online. These days, a majority, well over 80% of all data is accessed through, unless it's through Netflix, of course, on a mobile phone. But even Netflix is consumed hugely through mobile phones these days. A slideshow is a complete waste of time and space when it's on a mobile phone, to the point where people who have slideshows on desktop sites, quite honestly, these days tend to block those out on mobiles because they just take too long to load and they don't react well. Now, Google only measures really and ranks you based upon your mobile speed. So if you've got slideshows taking up that speed, then you really need to address that and remove them from your mobile sites at the very least. But I would actually say they look so naff and old now, you're better off just ditching them altogether. Number two, reconsider using a video background. And I say this because they look so beautiful. I've actually built some sites with them. They look amazing. But every time your website loads for someone new, it's downloading 52 megabytes of data. Or if you're using WebM as a video version, which is a particular kind of version of video that's much smaller in file size, you're still going to be downloading a couple of megabytes every time someone wants to view that. That slows you down. That uses up more data, and it's just generally not a smart thing to do. If you're going to get rid of slideshows, I would say get rid of the video background as well. I know you like it. I know it's pretty, and you're sitting there on your desktop computer or your laptop computer viewing it. This is not the way the majority of people are going to see your website. They're going to see it on a tiny little screen the size of this. And so when they do that, they're just going to want to be able to go, well, I want to see it fast. I want to get to the information I need and get back out. Nobody's really going to your website to experience an experience. They're really just going there to get information. So make it easy for them. Number three, do you really need that photo gallery? Is your business so interesting that photo gallery is important to you? Now, if you're a wedding photographer, obviously a gallery full of examples of your photography work, very important. Keep it. If you are a financial planner, a gallery full of people who are celebrating in front of a computer, probably not so important. And if you're using lots of photos of your local area to make you appear more local, consider that loading time is going to slow your page down, which is going to bring your ranking of your page down as well. So I would say avoid photo galleries on home pages if you can. Unless you're a photographer, and this is very important for you to have photography galleries or video galleries on there, but most of us are not. So for most services and for most e-commerce sites and retail sites, you don't need galleries. Don't use them unless you absolutely have to use them. Number four, are those animations really adding value? You notice I use a lot of animations in my presentations, but they are going across the internet as Canva presentations. They're not websites that have to load on tiny little mobile phones. So those animations are probably not doing the job you think they're doing. They look kind of cool, they look innovative and different, and your competitors don't have them. But they're also slowing down your website. They use a thing called JavaScript, and JavaScript adds more bloat to your website, tells your browser to have to do more things and work out more processing every time, so that when you have maybe 50 different browsers open and you've got lots of JavaScript all being processed at one time and held in memory, you're going to start to have some problems. So consider whether animations on a website are actually adding any real value to what's going on, or they're helping to illustrate something better. If they're not, it's probably a good idea to just boot them off. Number five, always use PNG files for graphics, but use JPEG files for photos. I say this because that's what the two different formats are very good at. PNG is not able to be compressed. PNG is only able to produce the data that it's got. So when it opens that file, it works really good with defined lines and graphics and text and overlays that are used rather than photographic elements. Photographs, because they use millions and millions of different colors, tend to be handled better by JPEG as a compression, because it makes the file size smaller. If you use that same file size, that same photo and save it as a PNG, you'll notice the file size is much bigger, which means every time your web page is loaded, someone's having to load down more and more file size. The more file size, the slower that's going to be to load. And of course, the worse your rank is going to be on Google. So try to stick to PNG graphics and JPEG photos. Even better still, try and use the new much more web-friendly versions of photo called WebP, so web photographics. WebP, if you're able to output your graphics as that. I know Canva doesn't do it just yet, but you can convert it in other converters, and you can use things like Smush and Cloudflare particularly to convert to the newer versions of things. So videos, the thing is called WebM, and it's much, much smaller than a MP4. So consider using those if you can, but in the meantime, while they're still really the main way to do it, PNG for graphics and infographics, JPEG for photos. Number 6, design your site for the mobile phone first. Now, I know this goes against everything you want to do because you're sitting in front of a computer right now designing your site, and you look at it as a desktop site. The trouble is, as I keep saying, 80% of people who encounter your site are not going to see that version of your website. They're going to see the version that sits on their mobile phone. And when it sits on their mobile phone, they'll be looking at going, wow, this looks really cluttered, and I have to scroll for an eternity to find the information I'm looking for. So when it comes to that, we have a problem because we're not reaching the people we want to reach, and they're not being delivered the information they're trying to receive themselves. So we really, really, really need to get out of this mindset that people view the website the same way that we as business owners do. They see it as a mobile site first, not as a website that's on a desktop or a laptop screen. So design first to make sure your mobile phone version is amazing, then add on features just for the desktop. But just understand that people use mobiles differently. They use desktops. That's something to get used to, because it means that people are generally looking for information fast and not trying to be wowed by an experience when they come in. So your website might look absolutely gorgeous on a desktop, but if it's really unusable on a mobile, then you're going to be in lots of trouble. Number 7, more content means slower loading, and this includes text. So if you've got lots of text loads quickly. So it's not quite so bad. But the more video content, the more graphic content, the more photographic content that you put onto your website, the slower that those pages with all that content are going to be. So if you want to add lots of content, I suggest you split your site up. Rather than having a doom scrolling, infinite scrolling front page that continually goes down and uses anchor links to connect everything to a menu, which makes the whole thing very, very slow to load, and it's going to get you ranked very poorly. Split things up into different pages. Have an about page, have a products page, have a services page, have a shop page, have a blog page, have a frequently asked questions page, but have them all as separate pages so you can take all that content that you would normally put on one infinitely scrolling page and spread it out. It's going to be a much better experience for your mobile users, because they're not having to go scrolling down 300 meters worth of scrolling, and they secondly won't even have to do that on a desktop screen. Even scrolling that far is just not good for you and your customers in terms of their ability to convert or to converse with you. It's just not going to work out well for you. Number 8, we're getting to the business end now. Try to illustrate things with icons instead of photos. The reason is because icons have a tiny little bit of data attached to them. Photos have quite a lot of data attached to them. You could say you have a picture of a truck as an icon, and that could be worth about 1 or 2 kilobytes. In a photo, that could be 150 to 350 kilobytes. Vast difference. The icons almost are just code. In fact, they are just code. They're just something which is represented by a line of code, which is so much easier to do, much faster to load, and makes just as much sense when you're trying to explain something as a photo would. In fact, photos can be rather vague in what they're trying to explain. So too busy trying to show everything that's in that photo, as opposed to the very core point of it, which could be just a tick or a truck or a house or a target that sort of icon can say just as much as a photo can say with a lot less loading time. Number 9, try and limit the external content. And by external content, I mean YouTube videos on homepages, Facebook like boxes on homepages. And my least favorite is the Instagram gallery on the homepage. Instagram galleries, yes, they look beautiful. And yes, you want to show your Instagram because it's easy to update and you think you're updating your website, but you're not, you're just updating Instagram. They are a huge problem on websites because their code changes all the time because Instagram changes all the time. Instagram doesn't want to have your photos from Instagram shared on websites. They just want the photos on Instagram. So you'll go in and consume them there. So I know it seems like a quick, easy, lazy way around trying to get new photos onto a website, but it's just going to cause you endless problems with page loading speeds. And half the time the thing will go down. I work with one particular naturopath who has an Instagram collection, Instagram gallery on her website. And it literally goes down every 6 weeks when there's some kind of update because Instagram doesn't actually want to do this. It does it, but really under protest. So really just limit those kind of plugins that come in with content from other sites. It's not going to do you any favors in terms of design, and it's definitely not going to do you favors when it comes to how much time it takes to load the website. And number 10, I would say, is probably a good thing to put across for any kind of a website developer, any kind of customer, any kind of business owner who's producing a website for their customers. Customize the experience on your website for the device it's being used on. People on phones like buttons for easy navigation and easy action for things. People on desktops like to click and use their mouse to move around. Very different devices, very different ways of using them, particularly for navigation. There's swipes and all sorts of things that happen on phones that you can't do on desktops or on laptops. So think about what your customers are going to be using and create an experience that matches the way they're going to use your website. So if they're primarily going to be going for quick information and to read an article or to get an update from your website, then using buttons to get around to those things is much more appropriate than using lots of images and putting previews of content on the home screen. The home screen on a mobile should be very uncluttered and very simple to just get you to the place that they need to get to. So takeaways from our design aspects and the on-page aspects of making a WordPress website run faster are design for speed. Make sure you take all those examples on board as how to design something that's going to load quickly, not just look good. You can actually make things look good and have them load fast as well. It takes a little bit of creativity and probably a second pair of eyes to make sure you're doing something right. Uncomplicate the content on your site by adding all these external pressures like Facebook like boxes and Instagram galleries, and adding galleries where you don't need them, and adding images where you can actually just use an icon to have a much faster experience. They uncomplicate your website, which doesn't just make it faster to load, it makes it quicker for people to use and consume your content. If they have to go through 10 hoops and watch for 10 things loading before they can finally see the information they want, they will go elsewhere, I promise you. So choose your content thoughtfully. Make sure that the content you're putting on there matches the expectations of the person on the device they're trying to use. And by that measure, I say think mobile first, not desktop. Don't build your website to look good on a desktop first. Do it the other way around. It doesn't matter whether it's with WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, or any other platform. Design your website to look good on a mobile phone first. Then go and scale it up if you can to the desktop.